Hi, I'm Dan Chambers. I'm a senior designer here at Absolutely Games, and I'm in charge of mission design and system design of the game, which means that I help to make missions and also to come up with how our systems work in the game. When we're making missions here, we're trying to build them for variety, but also for player choice. So ideally, with our unique way of setting up quite a robust stealth puzzle at the start of the mission, and then also combat in the mission, we wanted to account for the possibility that players would want to do a lot of stealth, but other players would want to go guns blazing at the start, and that in between where the stealth doesn't quite go how you planned and you've got to adapt. And the missions have really been built to try and account for those three different things, so that there's something there if you want to take out all the people quietly, but also if you want to go in all out and you build your team for that, then that's always an option.
When we were building Classified France 44, we really wanted to do something different. We've looked at all the games that we've enjoyed over the years, anything from XCOM to recent games like Gears Tactics, Mutant Year Zero, you name all the wonderful games that we've all played recently. We're big fans of these games, but we wanted to see if we could stretch what's possible. In our game, we've looked back also to games of old that are in this genre, so anything from the first XCOMs. Myself, I played it rather a lot, nearly failed university because of it, because I was playing it so much, and looked at what they did. So some of the more modern games that are in this genre have, for example, simplified a lot of the old mechanics, and what we've done is we haven't gone back to the way it was and that level of complexity, but we've added a little bit of slightly more hardcore mechanics in there that we think people will enjoy and be able to hark back to. We've also innovated in some of the things that people are used to in those games and decided to take a slightly different tack on them. There's certainly things in there, anything from the way we've approached Overwatch to the fact that we've got extra types of cover, and people will see why that's important when they play. One of the biggest things about our game is our morale mechanic. We looked at the way that other games handle shooting and being shot at, and we wanted to create something that's more realistic. And we don't mean realistic in the way that bullets exactly work, but the fact that if you're being shot at or you're shooting at somebody, it's actually pretty damn scary. So we wanted to model that, and so in our game, every shot counts. Even if you miss, you will actually do some morale damage, and that has a very, very big impact on the way the game's played.
So Fix and Flank was very much a seamless part of the morale system right from the beginning. One of the things we wanted to do was incentivise use of and engagement with the morale system. There's really two elements to fixing and flanking. The first is the fixing part, which is where you wear down an enemy's morale. And when you wear down the enemy's morale, if you can then get a shot at them when they're not in cover, which is to say, perhaps if you manoeuvre to their side, if you get to flank them, then you get an automatic critical hit. And that allows you to take down that enemy really, really quickly, because we really wanted to get to a point where if you wear down the enemy's morale, then you can finish them off quite fast. The second part of the Fix and Flank was designing a combat system where weapons actually have a fairly large, what we call spray zone. So for example, if you're firing a shotgun or if you're firing a submachine gun or something like that, it's projecting fire into a large, I suppose you can call it like teardrop shape. And the idea is that if you can flank the enemy, if you can get onto the side of an enemy, and if you can line up a whole bunch of enemies, you can actually shoot a lot of them at once and take a number of them down simultaneously. It's like those sort of moments from those 1970s World War II movies where Clint Eastwood goes into a room and clears it immediately with his MP40. We wanted a couple of those kinds of moments where you get to take down a lot of enemies at the same time.
One of the big problems that we saw in other tactics games that we played is often if you can take a shot and miss that shot, sure, you've taken a chance on that, but ultimately if your shots don't count and if too many don't count, if you get unlucky and have a bad turn, then you're being punished for something that's out of your control in a way that can completely go pear-shaped in a system where otherwise you're trying to be as tactical and methodical as possible. So what we wanted to do was create a system where ideally every single shot counts even if you don't hit. And that's up to, so what we did was we've put together a morale mechanic, which essentially, even if your shot misses, the sound of a bullet flying past someone's head, the explosion of a grenade nearby is still going to panic a soldier, and therefore they'll take morale damage. If they take too much morale damage, then they'll be suppressed and they'll be able to do less actions on their turn and they'll be less accurate. If they take a lot of morale damage, then they'll be broken and they won't be able to act at all on their next turn. But that applies to enemies and allied units. Given that you're outnumbered, you need to be really careful about managing your morale if you want to make it through to the end with your team intact. So in terms of the theme, we're really passionate about making sure that it did sell the experience of being this small team behind enemy lines in France in 1944, and ultimately one of the big parts of being a soldier is not just the blood and guts, it's about keeping yourself together, making it through on a human level, and the morale, as well as solving the other problems, was a really good way of selling that history and that struggle of being in a battlefield. One of the advantages we get from the morale system is, as well as it being an interesting way to increase the tactics of the game, it also allows us to dig deep into the theme of being a soldier behind enemy lines in a vastly outnumbered territory. And a big part of being a soldier is being able to withstand not just the physical punishment, but the mental punishment of being behind enemy lines, being shot at, being at risk all the time. And that's something we really wanted to get through in this mechanic. I think it comes across strongly that your team is not just suffering when they're getting hit, they're suffering from the mental fatigue of the whole thing. So one of the big things that differentiates Classified from a lot of recent tactics games is that we're not going for a small AP system, we're actually going for a very granular action point system, where characters at the beginning of the game have anywhere as much as 12 action points to spend on their turn, with different actions costing different amounts. And not only does that give us more flexibility in the costing of things and more tactical decisions, but it also allows you a lot more room to maneuver in the stealth phase. So the stealth encounters in the game rely on a lot of precise movement and precise timing of where you place your guys, when you strike, when you hold back, and using our granular AP system, and also a lot of other skills and mechanics such as distractions, breaking windows, silent takedowns. These all contribute to our ability to make an encounter that you can approach in a lot of different ways, but ultimately whatever way you play and whatever way you spec your team, you can find interesting solutions to that puzzle. One system that we have that works quite differently to a lot of other games in the genre is actually our characters in the stealth phase. If one is spotted, is caught out, you make a mistake and you're seen, other characters who may still be in good hiding spots are not detected at the same time, which means that when it all kicks off, if you've still got one or two people tucked away in a bush or behind a wall somewhere, you can catch those enemies off guard even when you think they've got you. Overwatch is a big part of a lot of tactics games, and one thing that we really wanted to build on that we don't usually see is the ability to choose tactically which target you're going to fire at with your Overwatch. Often a target will enter your Overwatch and the game will have you fire automatically at them, which can be annoying if the enemies act in the order that you don't expect and you end up shooting someone you don't want to shoot. So in Classified, when someone enters your Overwatch, you have the option to attack or ignore them and wait for a better target, which means that if you're in open combat, you can wait for that guy you really want to take out to run into your shot. But also if you're in stealth, you can set up the perfect ambush and not worry that it's going to go off when you don't expect it to. In Classified, we have 5 different classes that your characters can be, and each one has their own skill grid, which not only allows them to spec into specific things that they're good at, but each corner of the grid gives them a slightly different specialization. So each time you play through, even if you've got multiple characters of the same class, you can spec into different corners of the grid and give them different specialties, whether that be healing, granting action points, dealing extra damage, making tanking characters. There's a lot of variety in what you can choose and there's a lot of options there, but you're not going to be able to do them all in a single playthrough. So ideally you want to optimize your team to be the best set of 4 characters you can be in every possible situation. There were 2 main goals we have when making weapons for Classified. One is to keep the authenticity of the weapons from the period in the visuals, in the descriptions, and as much as possible in the way they function. But at the same time, we wanted to make sure that you had a good weapon economy, that over the course of the game, you could get bigger, stronger, and better weapons. So we've gone with a system where you have a limited amount of base weapons that are all period appropriate, but each one can be modded in a variety of different ways. By gaining those modded weapons, it allows you to drastically increase your power over the course of the campaign and deal with whatever the Führer throws at you. When representing enemies in Classified, we wanted to make sure that they were period appropriate in their uniforms, in their looks, and as much as possible in the way they behave. So at the start of the game, you'll be facing low ranking Wehrmacht units, But as the game goes on, and as you cause more chaos in occupied France, the Gestapo are going to hunt you, and the SS is going to be deployed to take you out. And over the course of the game, you'll see a full spectrum of enemies that would have been deployed at that time with their own skills and with their own equipment. Each type of unit has a series of classes within them that all have their own special abilities, which means that not only will you be fighting bigger, tougher units, but you'll also be fighting units who have more to offer in terms of maybe they're lobbing grenades at you all the time, maybe they're causing you to bleed, maybe they're pinning you, maybe they're recovering enemy morale. Whatever it is, whatever combination of enemies is there, it's going to present a new puzzle to you every single time. We're building Classified to be played multiple times, and we're hoping that people have a different experience every single time they play. So every time you enter a campaign, you'll be getting offered different characters to recruit. You will not have the opportunity to recruit all of the characters every time you play. The map itself that you interact with has different abilities that you can unlock. Those will be rearranged every time you play. And the endings as well. When you get your characters to the end, you'll get to find out their fates, what happened to them based on how they've progressed throughout the campaign. So everything from the start to the end should hopefully be a different experience every time you play.